Hello again, it's Andre from Momentumwingchun, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about one of my very favorite topics, which is the order of the powers. It's actually surprising that I did Wing Chun for quite a long time without knowing about this concept, and when I finally did understand the concept of the order of the powers, it totally changed my training, and I was able to deliver a lot more force than I ever could before, and also much more consciously, so it was less of a gamble of sort of trying to do things or just doing it more on an intuitive level, where understanding the order of the powers actually gave me the tools I needed to really start to understand Wing Chun at a much deeper level and just be able to do it much better. So just quickly on the concept of the order of the powers, I'd like to refer back to a previous video that we shot, which was called Everything's a Pull or Move Like a Dragon's Tail. And in a nutshell, what we want to talk about is the order of the powers, as in the center essentially has to move first, which will then pull the next one, which pulls the next one, which pulls the next one. So everything has to essentially happen in the right order. It's impossible to just start moving, for example, this joint here first, because we are essentially connected with frictionless motion, and if I was to try and move, for example, my hand first, in this case, that would cause tension, which means the movement is more than likely not going to work. So the concept of the order of the powers actually comes from Chu Shong Tin, and I read about it in this book. I really highly recommend all of you, if you're serious about Wing Chun, this is probably the best book you can possibly buy. On the topic of Wing Chun, it's really explanatory and it can teach you a lot. In here he has a chapter where he talks about the order of using different powers, and he's got them outlined here. For your reference, he uses a little bit of different wording than I've got here on the whiteboard. But yeah, these are my words on the whiteboard, but it's his ideas. I didn't invent anything that I'm about to talk about here. Okay, so the order of the powers, the first one is idea power. And I could carry on for a whole video on the topic of idea power, because it's really the most underlying concept that we learn by doing Silam Tao and by standing straight with our spine erect and charged up. It teaches us the idea of not using muscles in anything that we do. I guess it's so you're learning how to move using your capacity of idea versus the capacity of your muscles. A very quick way to explain how to get idea power is when we, for example, start our stance. So you want to think from Tai Gong, from the tip of your coccyx, you send the thought up through the spine, and you try to create space in between each of the vertebrae as you think up through the spine, and you try to think from the tip of your coccyx up to the top of your head, which is directly in line with your spine. Quick point of reference, it's not the point in the middle of the head where yogis would be thinking to when they do their alignment of chakras and things like that. It's actually slightly set further back, so it's directly above the spine, sort of towards the back of the head, which will then make your chin drop down when you stand straight. So you really want to stretch the spine as much as you can, but don't use muscle to push it apart. You just fill up the spine with thought and create space between the vertebrae. Thinking up to the top of the head, and that's really what the whole idea power is about, is finding that spot on the top of your head and thinking into that point, and then relaxing all your muscles so that everything moves around that point, or all movement is initiated from the thought, which controls the center in your body. So that's really just idea power. It's awareness of your body. The next power is body motion, and what it really is the spine moving sideways, forward, backwards, up or down, doesn't really matter. It's just motion of the body. In this case, in this analogy, if this stick here was my spine, it means that the body has to move first. Once the body is in motion, the next power that will come is body rotation. And it's quite logic, because first I need to have the two poles, so essentially my coccyx and the top of the head. Then I learn how to move these in space. And then as I can move in space, this will automatically then cause rotation when we contact an object. Okay, so to bring that concept of body motion coming before body rotation into the context of our own body, I think the jump cue pivot is probably one of the best examples to illustrate this point. If I'm in a jump cue position and I want to start to turn before I'm moving, the pivot isn't going to work if someone's actually holding there, resisting. So in terms of the motion versus rotation, what actually has to happen is the body has to start moving in this direction for me to be able to turn this way once the movement has started. And the obvious explanation is if I want the wheel to spin this way, the spine needs to move this way for the rotation to happen. So in a sit-on tower stance, I've got 50-50 weight distribution on both feet. My spine's in the center of my 2 feet. As I do my pivot, just for like a microsecond first, I start to move this way before the rotation begins. And when my pivot is finished, I have 100% of my weight above my back leg, 0% of my weight above my front leg. If I now want to pivot the other way, again in exaggeration, what would have to happen first is that my body has to move this way before the rotation can begin. It might look as if it's happening simultaneously, but for, again, that just microsecond or just that second of thought, I start to move this way, which will then allow me to turn to face the other way, in which case now again I have all my weight on the back leg and 0% of my weight on the front leg. So my weight has moved from here all the way over to this side as I'm doing my pivots. Okay, so body motion comes before body rotation. The next power I have available is shoulder motion, so that the whole shoulder can actually move. And I've got that available in Silam Tao, Jump Cue, and Bill G. Bill G is the form where, again, it becomes the most obvious because it's all about moving the shoulders and twisting the spine. But even when we're doing Silam Tao, there is still that vector of shoulder motion. So that's the whole shoulder joint that can move. But then the shoulder also has a rotational power, in this case where the arm, or the upper arm in this case, where it sits in the shoulder socket, can just swing. That's a separate power from the motion of the whole shoulder. Once I have shoulder rotation, I also have elbow rotation available. And then I also have wrist rotation, or wrist power, as Sigung calls it in his book, available. And the important thing now, how this translates to Wing Chun and how we generate power, again, just like the dragon tail, I have to do everything in the right order for it to work. So Heath is going to resist with his arm like that, so he's got structural advantage. And I'm just going to give an example of the order of the powers. So the wrong way of doing it is if I want to just straight away think I'm going to bring my hand down towards Heath's chest. Right now nothing's working because I've taken a shortcut and I've jumped straight to the end of the hierarchy. So if I now say there's absolutely no pressure on the contact point, I start off with thinking about Tai Gong, send the thought up through the spine, think to the top of the head, and now first I become aware of body motion. I can actually move my body in space. I can rotate my body, my shoulder can move, my shoulder can spin, the elbow can move, and if I have all these powers available, then it becomes very easy for me to let it roll off versus pushing down. I just let the whole thing roll off in my different joints, just like again the wheel on the stick when we were doing the thing where we're pushing at each other. And that can be used in any move. A good example as well is the punch. So if I just think I'm going to move my wrist towards Heath, I hold hard. Here I'm committed to moving the hand, but if I take everything out of my arm and my shoulders and I start off with Tai Gong, thinking to the top of the head, I have body motion, body rotation, shoulder motion, shoulder rotation, elbow motion. You can see already Heath is moving before I'm moving because I'm just slowly, kind of like a wave, rather than jumping to the end here where I get a rigid push. Tai Gong, think to the top of the head, really expand the spine, feel how the spine can move. It can rotate, the shoulder can move, the elbow can move, and it becomes very easy to move very powerfully that way without using any effort. And it can be done quickly too, so it's not like you have to take ages, so you can just go like that and you can do a very quick, sudden burst of it, same as, again, the dragon tail. It's just a conscious decision. Do I turn slowly and let it happen, or do I start moving quickly? It's just up to you how fast you move the center, essentially. And then leaving everything relaxed, sending the power through your body, kind of a bit like a wave, following the order of the powers. Rightio, thank you, Heath. That was good. Okay, so that pretty much summarizes my explanation of the order of the powers. I highly recommend, as I said, if you are interested to find out more, you can either contact me, but definitely you should try and find a copy of this book. It's called the Book of Wing Chun, written by Chu Shong Tin. It is seriously the best, most informative piece of literature available on the topic of Wing Chun, that I know of at least. Who knows if someone else has written anything as good as that. Yeah, there you go. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.